Just got word from meteorologists. This winter crisis has claimed 153 lives and counting, making it the deadliest winter event in 5 years. What we are witnessing right now across the United States is not just another cold snap. This is a polar vortex collapse that is fundamentally reshaping weather patterns from Florida to Montana, and the worst part is, it is far from over. Right now, as I'm recording this, 43 million people are under extreme cold warnings. New York City just recorded 3 degrees, colder than Antarctica. That's not a typo. The Big Apple is literally colder than the South Pole today. Dallas has been below freezing for over 200 hours straight. Miami broke temperature records that stood for over a century. And here's what's really concerning. The atmospheric engine driving all of this is a confirmed stratospheric warming event that is splitting the polar vortex in half around February 15th. Drop your location in the comments and tell me what you are seeing right now. Are you dealing with record cold, power outages, or have things started warming up where you are? I want to know how this is affecting your area specifically. The numbers coming out of this crisis are staggering. 3 separate storm systems hit back-to-back over 17 days. Winter storms Fern and Gianna, followed by the most brutal Arctic blast we have seen in years. At peak impact, this covered more territory under winter storm warnings than any weather event on record. We are talking about a nearly 2,000-mile stretch affecting 230 million Americans. Let's talk about what actually happened here, because the meteorology is absolutely wild. Winter Storm Fern kicked things off on January 23rd, dumping ice and snow from Texas all the way to Maine. But before anyone could recover, Winter Storm Gianna formed as what's called a bomb cyclone off the Carolina coast. This thing was so intense that the Air Force actually flew Hurricane Hunter aircraft into it, something they rarely do for winter storms. Here's what makes Gianna so unprecedented. It underwent what meteorologists call explosive cyclogenesis, with its central pressure dropping 30 millibars in 24 hours. That's 67% beyond the threshold for bomb cyclone classification. The storm formed at an unusually low latitude off Georgia and exploded into a full-fledged monster in under a day. Charlotte, North Carolina picked up 11 inches of snow, tying a record from 1880. That is a 146-year-old record. But here is where it gets really crazy. While the eastern half of the country was freezing, the west was experiencing the exact opposite. Montana hit 70 degrees. Los Angeles reached 88, hotter than typical summer days. 5 Montana cities recorded their warmest November through January period in weather history. The temperature contrast was so extreme that we had record heat and record cold happening simultaneously in the same country. If you are finding this information helpful, especially with everything that is happening weather-wise right now, hit that like button and share this with anyone who needs to know what is coming. This pattern is affecting millions of people, and having real-time updates could be crucial for planning and safety. Now let's break down what happened state by state, because the scope of this is mind-blowing. Florida experienced some of the most bizarre conditions. Every single official climate monitoring site broke or tied record lows for 2 consecutive days. Melbourne hit 24 degrees, an all-time February low. Fort Pierce recorded 23 degrees, also an all-time February record. Snow flurries were spotted in Tampa Bay and Sarasota for the first time since 2010. Cold-stunned iguanas were literally falling from trees across South Florida. One wildlife removal company collected 2,500 iguanas in just 2 days. Tennessee bore the absolute worst of the ice damage. Nashville Electric Service reported peak outages of 235,000 customers, roughly half their entire service territory. Recovery stretched across the entire first week of February. Even by February 7th, over 27,000 customers were still in the dark. The Tennessee National Guard cleared 650 miles of road while conducting welfare checks on stranded residents. Mississippi called this the worst winter storm since 1994. Nearly 300,000 customers lost power, with 25,000 still without electricity on February 5th, almost 2 weeks after the initial storm. Families were spending $400 or more on propane and generators just to stay warm. But here's something that gives you hope about infrastructure improvements. Texas. Remember the devastating grid failures during Winter Storm Uri in 2021? This time, the grid held strong. Battery storage surged from 220 megawatts to 17,000 megawatts. At peak demand, batteries supplied 9.5% of grid power. It is proof that lessons learned from past disasters can make a real difference. The Northeast faced persistent, bone-deep cold that just would not quit. Washington, D.C. endured 233 consecutive hours below freezing, the longest streak since 1989. New York City experienced its coldest winter in over 20 years, with the mayor reporting 17 people found outdoors who did not survive the extreme conditions. Share this video with your family and friends, because what is coming next could affect millions more people. The information about the polar vortex split and potential late February weather patterns is something everyone needs to understand. Here is what is really heartbreaking about this crisis: the impact on our most vulnerable populations. Homeless shelters from Atlanta to Boston reported being at capacity for weeks. New York City deployed 60 warming shelters and 20 warming buses that circulated continuously. Chicago opened additional overnight warming centers as wind chills hit -40 degrees. In cities like Nashville and Memphis, outreach teams worked around the clock to bring people indoors, but many individuals experiencing homelessness still faced life-threatening conditions with no reliable shelter options. The Great Lakes region saw some fascinating but dangerous conditions. Lake Erie froze to 95% coverage, effectively shutting down lake-effect snow for western New York. Chicago experienced its coldest weather in 7 years, with O'Hare Airport logging 500 delays and over 50 cancellations on February 7th alone. Grand Rapids, Michigan recorded -19 degrees, the coldest reading since 1994. Meanwhile, the economic damage was severe and still climbing. Natural gas prices surged 78% as demand skyrocketed and production facilities froze. Nearly 21 gigawatts of power generation went offline. Total flight cancellations from both storms exceeded 17,700. Some airlines called this the most disruptive weather event in their history. Baltimore reported 160 water main breaks. Cincinnati saw 80 breaks as old infrastructure buckled under the extreme cold. Now, here is what everyone needs to understand about what is coming next. The stratospheric sudden warming event I mentioned earlier is not just meteorological jargon, it is a confirmed atmospheric disruption that is reshaping weather patterns. Temperature anomalies in the stratosphere are running 40 degrees Celsius above normal. The polar vortex is literally splitting into 2 cores around February 15th. For the next week or so, we are actually going to see some relief. Pacific air is going to moderate eastern temperatures through mid-February. Highs should rebound from single digits to the 30s and 40s. Cities that have been stuck in deep freezes will finally get a break. But folks, this is temporary relief, not the end of the story. The real concern is what happens in late February and early March. The atmospheric interference that is currently shielding us from the full effects of that stratospheric warming will not last forever. Weather models are already flagging the potential for new Arctic outbreaks in the final week of February. The polar vortex disruption could bring additional rounds of severe cold just when everyone thinks winter is winding down. What is your biggest concern about the next few weeks? Drop a comment and let me know if it is potential power outages, travel conditions, or just dealing with more extreme temperatures. I read every single comment, and your local perspective helps everyone understand how widespread these impacts really are. Here is something that really drives home how extreme this pattern has been. The western United States recorded the lowest snow cover in satellite records dating back to 2001. Oregon, Colorado, and Utah all reported record-low statewide snowpack. The Sierra Nevada is sitting at just 50 to 70% of normal. While the East was buried in snow and ice, the West was experiencing drought conditions that could affect water supplies for millions of people this summer. The science behind all of this points to some really significant changes in how our atmosphere behaves. When Arctic sea ice is at record low levels, which it currently is, it weakens the temperature differences that normally keep the jet stream stable. Add in unusually warm Gulf of Mexico waters running around 72 degrees in January, and you get the perfect setup for these explosive storm systems. Climate scientists are studying whether polar vortex disruptions like this are becoming more common. Recent research suggests that while Earth is unequivocally warming, severe winter weather events are not going away. In fact, they might become more intense even as they become less frequent. It is a complex relationship between Arctic warming and mid-latitude weather patterns that we are still working to understand. Make sure you are subscribed with notifications turned on, because we are tracking multiple developing weather situations over the next several weeks. With the confirmed polar vortex split happening around February 15th and the potential for additional severe weather through March, having real-time updates could be really important for your safety and planning. The human cost of this crisis extends far beyond the statistics. Families in Tennessee spent their life savings on generators and hotel rooms during 2-week power outages. School districts from Texas to Maine closed for extended periods, affecting millions of students. Small businesses, especially those dependent on daily foot traffic, saw revenue plummet during the extended cold period. Healthcare systems faced increased emergency room visits for hypothermia, carbon monoxide poisoning, and injuries from ice-related falls. Emergency response teams worked around the clock under incredibly dangerous conditions. The National Guard activated over 5,000 members across 15 states. FEMA deployed 900 staff members and pre-positioned 7 million meals, 3 million liters of water, and over 650,000 blankets. This was one of the largest federal emergency responses for a weather event in recent history. Here is what makes this situation particularly dangerous going forward. The February 15th polar vortex split could create a pattern where Arctic air becomes even more unstable. Instead of staying locked up in the Arctic where it belongs, we could see repeated southward plunges of extremely cold air through the rest of winter and into early spring. The atmospheric setup is primed for additional bomb cyclone development along the East Coast. For the immediate future, folks in the Pacific Northwest and Northern California should prepare for beneficial storm activity from February 13th to February 15th. This could help with the severe drought and low snowpack conditions. But the Northeast needs to stay alert for a potentially significant winter storm from February 15th to February 21st. Models are showing signals, but the track and timing remain highly uncertain. Tell me in the comments what you think about this whole situation. Are you prepared for potentially weeks more of dangerous weather? How is this affecting your daily life, your work, your family's routine? The pattern we are in suggests this winter is far from over, and staying informed is going to be crucial. One thing that is particularly concerning is how this cold pattern is interacting with existing vulnerabilities in our infrastructure. Power grids that performed well during milder winters are being pushed to their absolute limits. Water systems designed for typical temperature ranges are failing when pipes freeze solid for weeks at a time. Transportation networks that can handle normal winter weather are shutting down completely under these extreme conditions. The recovery process is going to take months, even after the weather pattern finally shifts. repairing hundreds of water main breaks, replacing damaged power infrastructure, clearing debris from wind and ice damage, and addressing the economic impacts on businesses and families will extend well into spring and summer. What we are witnessing is a winter weather pattern that is operating outside the bounds of what most emergency management systems were designed to handle. The combination of extreme cold, massive snowfall, ice accumulation, and hurricane-force winds in rapid succession has overwhelmed response capabilities across multiple states simultaneously. If this information has been helpful for understanding what is happening and what might be coming next, give this video a quick like and share it with anyone who might need to know about these developing weather patterns. The more people who understand the scope of what we are dealing with, the better prepared everyone can be for what is ahead. The bottom line is this: we are in the middle of a historic winter weather crisis that has already claimed over 150 lives and caused billions in damage, and the atmospheric conditions driving it are not finished with us yet. The next few weeks will determine whether this becomes a winter that gets talked about for decades to come, or something even more significant. Stay safe, stay informed, and keep an eye on those forecasts, because this winter still has more surprises in store.